My name is Asha Clinton, and I have been a psychotherapist most of my life. Before that, I was a professor of cultural anthropology at Princeton University here in the United States. And I was drawn in my anthropological fieldwork to see how much human beings suffer on a daily basis in many different parts of the world. And it struck me that rather than studying people, healing people would be much more beautiful and much more meaningful. And I set out on a journey to discover how best to do this. My journey took me through Jungian analysis. And just at the beginning of the time that energy psychology started developing, I became aware of it and became trained in the earliest methods of energy psychology. And my work was much better with my clients. There was only one problem. There were no special applications for special disorders or physical illnesses or spiritual blockage. The result was that I began a journey which lasted 19 years to find ways of treating the body, the psyche, and the spirit which had not been developed before, and the lack of them was causing us not to be able to heal our clients quickly enough, efficiently enough, and deeply enough. And so step by step, this new energy psychology therapy was born. It is called advanced integrative therapy, and it is advanced in the sense that it offers specialized treatment for many physical diseases, for cancer, for many of the personality disorders, for attachment disorders, and for many of the other disorders that are more difficult for psychotherapists to treat. It became apparent to me after a while that there was no clear distinction phenomenologically between the psyche and the spirit. And it also became obvious from watching my clients that they were developing spiritually as a result of doing AIT therapy with me, without any desire or interest either on their part or on my part for that development. And so I began to add new protocols and a new orientation towards spiritual development and the end of spiritual blockage as well. So what AIT developed into was not a therapy, or rather a psychotherapy in the sense of working with the psyche, because it works with the body, the psyche, and the spirit. And it has various orientations within that general orientation. But it turned into the work that I had been looking for all my life, because my clients react to treatment with lightness and joy. They suffer much less. And I have the great pleasure of watching that happen every day I'm in my office. And as we say in the States, it's win-win.
And how is the process to be taught to learn?
How is the process?
To learn.
We've divided the process into 16 seminars, some of them focusing on various bodily aspects, others psychological, others spiritual. But everything begins with Ait Basics. This is a 3-day seminar where we teach you the basic protocol, the trauma protocol that we use in AIT, and where we also teach you what I consider the jet plane of AIT. It's called 3-step transformation, and it's a method by which we not only treat a trauma, but when the trauma occurs within a pattern of similar traumas, thematic traumas that are thematically the same. What happens if we use 3-step transformation is that the repetition of that theme or trauma stops for good. So it saves therapists a lot of time. They don't need to treat the same kinds of issues again once they've been thoroughly treated with three-step transformation. And that makes more room in our therapists' practices for newer patients.
And in France, so what is François is able to teach all the process? Or?
No. Francois, like most of our younger teachers, can teach the first 2 seminars. He will be learning to teach 2 more seminars each year. But I generally can be talked into coming to teach some of them.
Yeah. So you can come in France to
Sure.
teach?
As long as I have a translator.
Yeah,
Because my French is so poor now, it's been so many years since I spoke, that I wouldn't burden anybody with it.
Okay, no problem. And how many people can you train in the same time?
80 or less.
80. Okay.
In the early days of Energy Psych, I used to treat 60 and 80 at a time. But when we do that, we bring trainers with us.
Yes.
And of course, since Francois is in France, we have one trainer close by immediately. And I think we have a few that would come from the UK and also from Germany, so that we wouldn't have to bear the expense, either you or us, of the plane flights across the Atlantic, just mine.
How many people are trained in AIT?
I don't know the exact number, but it's somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 at this point, and in many different countries.
Ah.
Yeah.
And when you discover this technique, when you start to train people with this technique?
Do you want the answers to both?
Yes.
Okay. I discovered the technique while I was napping in the bathtub in March of 1998 on a Sunday morning, and I had dozed off, and when I awoke, the entire structure was in my mind. It was like a gift from heaven. And I quickly wrote it down. And it was frightening to try at first because I had never used the chakras in such a way. I was a student of yoga for many years, so I knew a good deal about them, but to think of using them to treat a trauma, it was almost inconceivable. So the first time I cleared one of my own traumas, I did it in fear, and it left very quickly and easily. So I began to experiment on myself, all my friends. Finally, I was confident enough to experiment on clients with their written permission. And it started to, it continued developing from that point on. Every so often I would get a pressure in my heart center, and that was a signal from source for me to go and sit at the computer. And when I do this, I sit with my eyes closed, which I don't do when I type normally. And the words come and I write them down. Then my ego has to edit the material because it always needs editing. So that's how it began, and it's continued this way for, it's 19 years now. Yeah. And what was the second question you asked?
When did you start to train people?
The first mini training I gave was in 1998, just a few months after it began. One of the first Energy Psych meetings that happened was in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And what I had at that point was the core belief protocol, the protocol we use to treat cognitions in a very thorough and efficient way. And so I presented that, and people were very excited about it, and they said, you should make up more. And I didn't know how to explain to them then that I wasn't making it up, that it was coming to me. And so that was the first presentation in 1998. By 1999, in the first large ACEP meetings, I had the entire manual written, and I presented the first 3-day seminar.
And last question, why AIT belong to energy psychology?
Because what we use to make trauma disappear is the movement of energy, not only through the major energy centers in the body, but also through the canals that connect them. And our basic understanding follows what Einstein said, which is to say that matter and energy are the same phenomenon at different speeds. And what that means is that your memory of the experience of a trauma is energy. The emotions that developed from that trauma are energy. The cognitions, the distorted cognitions that come very, very often with trauma, those are also forms of energy. In fact, every aspect of trauma is made only of energy. So if I tell my body by moving my hands gently down its energy centers to remove a particular trauma, what a very embodied person can feel when they do this is that the energy starts bubbling here, and then as the hand goes down the energy centers, you can feel the energy actually moving down and moving down. And when you come to the root chakra, which is the last one that we use, then you can feel the energy shoot down the legs and come out the soles of the feet. So it's not some theory that somebody wrote that waits to be proven. It's a matter of experiential fact. I worked very hard in the early days to become very embodied because I wanted to know if this was some fantasy I had invented or if I could verify it phenomenologically. And it was very easy to verify once I could feel my own body clearly. In the United States, many of us are not embodied due to trauma. I was one.